Welcome to the podcast, Rewind, Pause, Play with the UTS Women's Mentoring Group.
The purpose of the UTS Women's Mentoring Group is to provide opportunities for women of UTS to develop skills that focus on personal growth and leadership in a nurturing environment, promoting learning, mentoring, and support for career advancement initiatives.
As UTS continues to grow, we have more employees in different time zones, on various shifts, and of course with busy schedules. We decided to start this podcast so we could reach more of our employees on any day and at any time that's convenient to them.
Our goal is to increase the conversation about an array of topics with a diverse group of employees across our entire organization.
Whether it's walking on the treadmill, commuting to and from work, or maybe on your couch during quarantine, we are glad you're here with us.
As you listen, we'd love to get your feedback on topics you're interested in hearing about, or even an employee you would enjoy hearing from. Please feel free to email us at uwmg@utsnacks.com.
Al escuchar, nos encantaría obtener sus comentarios sobre los temas que estén interesados en escuchar, o tal vez conocen un empleado que disfrutarían escuchar en este podcast. No dude en enviarnos un correo electrónico a uwmg@utsnacks.com.
Welcome to the first episode of Rewind, Pause, Play with UWMG. I am Casey Murrin, the chair of UTS Women's Mentoring Group. Also on the committee are Allison Kramer, vice chair, Ashley Burks, treasurer, Ashley Cox, secretary, Abby Martinez Diaz, engagement chair, and Jessica Reese, engagement chair. I will be the host of today's podcast.
It's with great pleasure that I get to introduce our first guest, Shannon Redcay. Hi, Shannon.
Hi.
And happy St. Patty's Day.
I was one day off, but I still wore green.
I know, I miss wearing my green today.
I thought it was tomorrow.
So Shannon is the Senior Vice President of Innovation and Value Creation, and she's been with us for 6 years. Previously, Shannon worked for White Wave Foods for about 9 years in their R&D department working with dairy products. Shannon began her career at UTS in a director role, and she's since worked her way up to a Senior Vice President position. Currently, Shannon's the only female on our executive operating leadership team. So Shannon, I guess first, how did you get into the snack foods and dairy products industry?
Well, food science was never something I knew about when I was growing up. I was really good at science, and I was really good at kind of all the sciences. And when my mom went back to work when I was younger, I had to cook dinner for the household. So then I loved cooking, and I took the PSATs, and I think I said those things, and I thought I was going to be like an actuary or something terribly boring. And the food science departments from across the country sent me mailers. So I just kind of stumbled into it based on what I really enjoyed, and I just kind of followed my gut, and that led me straight into dairy.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So I grew up in this area. I grew up in Ephrata. But I was determined to get out of this area when I was 18, and so I went to school in the Midwest. And then I went even further and ended up in Colorado. And so I just followed that. So that took me to dairy, and then what brought me to snack was trying to get back here. Right.
Okay.
So I was going through some personal things. I left my husband. I was tired of my job, and I had a 3-year-old. So I wanted to come back to family, and after burning it all down, I figured this was the place to rebuild it. So I hunted UTS down, and I badgered Brian Greth and Tucker into talking to me, because they initially didn't want to because I didn't know snacks. And so I told them why they should, and then they eventually let me. So that's how I got here.
Yeah, persistent.
Very. That's a nice way to say it.
So then, as I mentioned, you started in a director role here at UTS. So what are some maybe tips and tricks for all of us, and how you went from director to where you're at now, Senior Vice President, especially as a woman and as a woman in a more male-dominant field, what kind of set you apart, or some of those, like I said, tips and tricks to get you where you are?
Yes, I think the fact that anyone would even ask that question, right, sets you apart, because not everybody has those aspirations. So the fact that you do, right, tells me that you have the mindset to be self-motivated and achievement-oriented, and there is some reason that you want greater span of influence, right?
So already having that drive to want to be at that level
is a huge piece of that, right? I'm going to try to talk somebody into that, because you're either wired that way or you're not. There are some days where I make a glib comment, like, I'm going to go work at Starbucks, and then my husband's like, you would have the cups reorganized and you'd have a whole different thing, like, that would take about 4 hours and that place would be upside down. But I think that's just inherent in someone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, I just recognized that in myself, and I got comfortable with that a long time ago, right? So I think that's not particularly helpful, but there's an element of like self-confidence in, I know I can do this. I have consistently demonstrated that I can do this, both to myself and others. And so I am okay being a little bit more declarative about what I want to do here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably one of the bigger things is, when I was still at White Wave, I was pretty clear with my boss at every, I had a few, but my boss at every juncture, this is what my ultimate aspiration is. And maybe I'm still trying to figure out what that looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the apex of my career, in this moment, this is what I think I want to be doing. Do you think that that's in my cards? What are the things I need to work on to get better about that and to make myself more credible? And can you help me? Like, is there anything that I can do for you? Is there anything you can do for me? How do we jointly craft this path together, right? So,
and I think that's key. I know I have the same relationship with my manager, that you can talk through what are your goals and
Mm-hmm.
how can you help me get there, or even someone in that mentor-mentee, maybe you don't know it at the time that that's the relationship that you have, but I think that's also helpful to have your goals set and understand which direction you want to go.
Totally.
Yeah.
And knowing your goals will change, right? Like, there was a period of time at White Wave. So it was Dean Foods White Wave Morningstar at the time. So our R&D team was like 126 people.
Wow.
And so my boss was the EVP of R&D, and I was like, well, I would like your job, right? So after 3 or 4 years there, I said, I don't know what succession planning looks like for other leadership positions within the company, but I would want to maybe go beyond your job, right? So they did me a solid, and they gave me real feedback on things. Some things I had to work to correct, and I did, feedback's hard, but I like to think I'm better at feedback than most. I'll take it because it's helpful to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what people want to share with me is their perception, and perception's reality. So I need to acknowledge those, right? They sent me through some really big leadership courses, right? So that just added another layer of feedback and, experience and things like that. But be okay with your goals either being ambiguous or changing, right? You don't, just because you set a plan at this moment, you don't have to stick to it. And then it is all about making sure others know what your ultimate ambitions are. But in a way that's not too aggressive, right? Like, I'm not trying to run down that path. I want to make sure that I am qualified and that I'm comfortable, and that the next step is always something that's in mind, but I'm not trying to burn down towns to get there.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right. Yes.
But if no one ever knows what you want to do, how are they even going to give you a chance to do it?
And how are they going to invest in something like a leadership program that you're talking about if they don't even know that you want to be at
Correct.
that level or grow to that
Like,
level?
I have some people on my team right now that would like to move into different functions or different roles. I'm like, okay, well, now I know. So let me let you have a project that's going to touch a whole bunch of different functions so that other people start to know who you are. Whereas otherwise, I would never have given that person that assignment because it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, and it sounds like just from a little bit that we've talked now, communication
Huge.
is key. Communicating with fellow employees, communicating with your direct report,
Mm-hmm.
and beyond as well, so that they know that that's your goal. And like you said, not everyone's goal is to be a senior vice president, but it could at least be a manager or whatever that goal might be. Communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think on the communication piece, the other thing that has been important to me, and we've talked about it a little in the past, is just what do you say about yourself? And how I think it might be, I don't know that it is, but it might be different for women, right? So I think that we have a tendency to downplay our achievements or not mention them, or I've been listening to a couple women lately on other podcasts that say they put just in their emails, just checking in, just doing this. How do you swipe that out? Right? So
I do that. Yes.
So don't do that, right? You're not just checking in. You're checking in because, like, I need an answer. Answer me, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's I think it's indicative of how we have a tendency to kind of softball it, and maybe not be as forward. So that was another thing that I've been really cognizant of over the years is when someone asks me what I do, I don't go, oh, I work in R&D, and especially in this new title, I've now got my kind of 3-sentence speech down about this is what I do. I lead this, I'm responsible for this, and we do this, right? It's not about me, it's not about but it's about I do have the authority to execute on these things, and the person that I'm talking to, I want them to understand that, right?
Yep, that 30-second elevator speech,
Correct.
as you would say, right? And I think it's hard for women to speak about themselves without being directly maybe asked about certain things, like you were saying with accomplishments, and women not really talking about all of their awesome accomplishments that they might have unless someone's directly asking and
Correct. I think it's just I don't know why, and I don't think it's in our nature, and that's why I think for anybody that's really seeking some of this career progression, write it down, right? And look at good examples that you've seen from other people, but then practice it. And I know that sounds silly, but practice it is what makes it more comfortable. So try it out on a couple people. We're all in these Teams meetings with people we don't know, and everyone has to introduce themselves probably a few times a week. Try it out there, right? The more you say it, the more comfortable it's going to get. And after a while, it won't seem like something that you have to do. It'll just be second nature. And I think it'll then filter into the rest of your conversations and the way that you interact with people too.
Yeah, because you're, at the end of the day, Casey Murrin is not just a director of commercial finance, just like Shannon Redcay is not just a senior VP of innovation and value creation. A lot of people don't even know what any of that means.
They have no idea. No idea.
So that's where your 30-second or your 3-sentence, what do you do answer is not just, well, I'm just you hear me say it.
Yeah, I did hear you
not
say it.
just the director of, commercial finance. So.
And you're going to be talking to someone, and that someone wants to know why they should engage with you. I don't mean that in the negative sense, but on what topic should they come to you? Do they come to you, or do they have to go to somebody else, right? So that elevator speech also helps set context for everybody so that they know, no, I am your person that's going to answer this. This is what you're going to engage with me on, and this is where our roles are going to be.
And I think that's key even with the acquisitions we've had, because not everyone at Truco is going to have any idea what all of us at UTS or the headquarter, so having that, what is the innovation and value creation team doing, or what's the commercial finance team doing, that's also, I think, great advice to have that as well, as you're meeting those folks.
Right. It also, I think to me, it also helps cement it in your own mind, right? The more you say, you're like, this is what I do, right? And then it's easier to internalize that. And then on some level, it also helps you think about, okay, well, then this is the next adjacency that I could potentially go do, right? And here's where I can start to stretch a little bit. And it, to me, it's always helped to think about what comes next as well. I mean, the leadership and, that elevator speech is one thing. I think there's also a piece that's important about what are you really good at that separates you from other people, right? And so me being a scientist, like I'm a food scientist, my master's is in protein chemistry. It's terribly boring, right? But like a lot of scientists can't talk to people. You know what I mean? So on my resume, if you looked at it, you would see something about a collaborative, communicative scientist who sees potential opportunity and then is able to deliver it, right? Because that spans something that most scientists don't have, and then it also speaks to the leadership goals, right? And all of that. So I think having that in the back of your mind too, you use it differently. You use it in different situations than you would the elevator speech, but it also helps you to frame yourself in terms of what am I really great at? What sets me apart? And what value do I bring to an organization or to a team or to a group or to just one relationship, right? As a result of all those things that are inherently me and where my strengths are.
That it's not just the degree,
correct?
Your bachelor's or master's degree on there. I have an accounting degree, but I'm also creative. Right. Not many accountants can say they might be creative.
Exactly.
So it's about those other aspects, some of those things that, like you're saying, you wouldn't maybe think about having that as one of your strengths. Like you were saying with communication. Well, as a scientist and being able to communicate with others, that sets you apart.
It's a distinction, right? And all those little distinctions are the things that start to add up. And they help carve you out in people's minds from all the others. right? So there are many directors of accounting out there, but to your point, not all of them are creative. And so when you start to talk about that, and when you can give examples of where that creativity has led to value for the organization, that starts to set Casey apart from everybody else in that situation. And then you're naturally just a little bit more top of mind as some of these other positions and all these other roles come out as a result of who you are and what you bring to the role.
And this comes back to being able to communicate with your direct report, whoever it might be, to be able to almost sell yourself as well on some of these other aspects and your other strengths that you might have besides.
Yeah. And in a I look at a lot of people that sell themselves as like, ugh. But, like in a very authentic and approachable and whatever way is comfortable to you. Because that's the other thing that I think has been important. And I've spoken at a few of these, women's luncheons or things, and everyone always goes, what's important to you? And for me, it's about being able to be authentic, right? So I don't know where, because if you asked 15-year-old me, she was not. My boss right now says I have sass, I think is what he says, and it's a nice way of saying it. But I'm like, I don't know that I was always like that. So at some point in my life, I came into that. But that's important to me, that I can just sit in a meeting and kind of be myself and feel comfortable being myself. So again, as you're saying all these things, practice them on some level to get more comfortable with them, but do them in a way that feels true to you, right? Because if you feel like you're acting all day long, eventually you're going to get worn out.
And I think that's hard for women.
Yeah. You cannot put on that show all day long. And everyone is always going, oh, your mic's always on, always watch what you say. Yes, but your internal compass is going to take care of that, to a good extent. So just be yourself and make sure that you're in a situation or that you're in a relationship with your manager or you're in a company that values who you are as a person so that you can do that.
Yeah, and I think back to the leadership piece and the company investing in you, and when they find value in you as an employee, and that you are, like you're saying, being authentic and communicating that this is the next level that you want to go, that's when the company hopefully comes back with investing in leadership roles or whatever the path might even be. Maybe it's not leadership. And maybe it's moving laterally instead of, a different department instead of going up,
Yeah, it doesn't have to be an up. It can be whatever your path is and whatever plan it is you want for yourself, whether that's a lateral or maybe it's over here and over here. It's just, be overt about it and let them try it on and then invest in you for it.
Yeah, I think those are great tips. The elevator speech, your kind of 3 sentences about what you do, really playing on the strengths that you have beyond just maybe your title or your degree that you have, and sell yourself in a non-obnoxious way.
Well, but if your authenticity is to be obnoxious,
then there you go.
Be obnoxious, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess moving into, it mentioned earlier, you being in snack food and dairy products and kind of that male-dominated field, and being able to work your way to the position that you're at. I think all of that kind of comes into play, whether you are female or male. Is there anything in particular that you feel as being a female that you needed to do because it was more male-dominated field, beyond kind of those things that we discussed that anyone can really use as tips and tricks?
Yeah, I think I got a harder edge, right? So dairy and snack to some degree, but dairy is really historically a pretty male field. And so when I was in that role and I was supporting the Dean Foods portion of that business, we had like 120 dairies across the country, and we launched a new item, and I had to go and make sure that it started up successfully in 64 of them. So you can imagine over a span of a couple months how many road trips I had to take to the middle of nowhere, right? And so I'd walk into Great Falls, Montana, to a plant that was all men, right? And there were a couple of instances where I walked in and someone goes, "What do you know? You're a young girl."
Oh gosh.
I think that might have been a direct quote. And so to me, I think it gave me a little bit of an edge, right? Because in that moment, I'd like to think that I handled that gracefully. I'm sure I didn't, right? But I might have said something like, well, I am in the position that developed this. I know everything about it, so I'm going to help you make it successful. I'm sure I said nothing like that, right?
Maybe you wish you would have said
I think I've reinvented my history. But what it did do is after you've had interaction after interaction after interaction like that, that's either overtly aggressive or it's a microaggression or you've seen it, I don't know, you just kind of come up with some sort of witty comeback, right? Maybe I definitely curse more than I used to, right? And I've looked at this a lot and said, am I just trying to act stereotypically male? Maybe, right? And I think
fit in with the boys,
fit in with the boys a little bit, but mentality. At the same time, still again preserving who I am and doing it in a way that I actually enjoy. Right, so I was just picking on my male colleagues yesterday because no one noticed my haircut. I cut like 6 inches off my hair.
And as soon as you walked in, I said,
as soon as you walked in, you said something, right? But just doing all of that and having that rapport, but I do think it made me a little edgier, right? Like I don't shy away from conflict. I don't try to invent it, right? But if conflict arises, I will run head on into it, right? And I will address it and we will talk about it right here. I think that's a skill that I've come into as a result of some of this, right? So the first time somebody says something callous to you, it maybe shocks you a little bit. After it happens 12 times, been here already, done this, right? And so it makes it a lot easier. Just dive into it, get on with it, and move on down the road.
Okay. So along with being female in the male dominant field, there's obviously things outside of work that I know as a new mom that you're constantly thinking about on top of your day-to-day job. That when you come to work, that doesn't go away.
Yep.
What meal am I going to put on the table tonight? Rushing around, I think I had 3 or 4 bags in my hand while I was carrying my 25-pound month-old to the car without dropping him. And throughout the day, just worrying about him, how's he doing, on top of everything else. So how do you balance that? I know you're also into fitness. I thought I heard you say you're in a race, or you were in a race recently. You're going to be
for one. Yeah.
So how do you kind of juggle that working mom life and then even being able to do the things that you also want to do outside of work and kids? And
my son is 9. And actually just this morning, his stomach has hurt for like the last 3 days. And so this morning, I was a couple minutes late to work because I needed him to go to the bathroom. So these are the things that we think about. And for dinner tonight, we're having honey garlic shrimp.
Oh, yum. I have no idea what we're having, so I'll worry about that today.
Part of me is, how do I make systems for myself? And that is not an interesting answer, but my entire life runs off of systems. And the systems are things like the island in my kitchen does not have anything on it. If there's something on it, it means I need to pay attention to it, right? So it's a physical manifestation of my to-do list, right? For me, it has always been important that my son sees me working, right? And my husband works. So he sees both of us working. He sees what that looks like, because I want him to have that full perspective of what are the balances and what are the concessions. And yes, you go to the before school program because I have to drop you off before the bus comes. The bus comes at 9. What bus does that?
That's crazy. Late.
Yeah. So you go to there, but it's because we choose to have careers, right? And we enjoy our careers and we're fulfilled by them. So I think it's about how you manage through your own systems, right? I keep 2 phones. A lot of people laugh at me for that. I have a personal phone. It's tied to my Apple Watch so that I know if the school calls or if the nurse needs me, I can see it, even if I'm in a meeting, right? I choose then to bleed my workday out for the entire day. And that is just what works for me. That might not be what works for everybody, but there is not a time that you can't reach me on this phone, right? So I will answer the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning if there's a quality issue at a plant. We've been there and done that. I will answer emails, and I look at this phone quite a bit because to me, seeing and being aware of things, even if I don't address them until the next day, helps me get my mind around and start planning for what it is I need to tackle when I come in, right? But again, it all comes down to these are my systems. I eat the same thing myself for breakfast and lunch 5 days a week. And I make it all on Sundays, and it's in containers, and I just pull one out every night. Because as I've done that, then I don't have to think about that. And I don't have to spend my headspace over there, right? So all those little things, when I hit the door on the way home at night, like I have an hour commute, I've left most of it in the car, and I hit the door and we play some games, right? And we go out and play basketball, and I can be mom for a few minutes. The fitness piece, I've told my husband and my son, like, this is my hour, just leave me alone. Right? So I go in the basement, that's where our gym is, this is what I'm doing. But even that, I didn't have time to go to a gym. And going to the gym is important to me. And so what did we do? Well, we sacrificed a few other things, right? So that I could buy a power rack and some weights and a treadmill for the basement because I knew that's what was going to be able to make me feel balanced, right? So some other things suffered as a result of that, but now we have a gym in the basement, gym. Yeah. And that helped me achieve that balance. So again, it's all about what works for you and what are the things that are really important to you that you need to preserve so that you feel like a whole human. I get up early because I like to take a shower unrushed. And I like to just have a little bit of time to put on my moisturizer every morning, right? Like if I skip that step, I don't feel that great. So I'll take it out of my morning, and that's okay. Maybe I lose half an hour of sleep in the morning, but it lets me do those things that are important to me.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and with the gym idea, you want to be able to have that hour, that's your time. So now you don't have to commute to and from a gym. That's more time than you can spend either doing work things or spending time with your son.
Yep.
I like that. And then the meal prep, like you're saying, one less thing that you have to worry about is feeding yourself then.
Correct.
Because you're more worried about probably feeding your son.
Correct.
Getting him to school.
And he goes to bed at night. He goes to bed at 8:15. And so that kind of becomes then my time I'll finish up any emails that I have. I'll look and see if I need to start up the computer. But then I'll start to think about what are we having for dinner the next day, right? And I'll tell you, my freezer, I'm such a boring routine person, but it's always got 10 bags of frozen vegetables in it, right? It's always got 6 or 7 different types of fish and meat. And I'll pull them out the night before, and then we sort of have a plan for the next day, right? Because if we go out and eat out on a Wednesday, for us, that breaks the whole routine. Then all of a sudden, I don't want to have my healthy breakfast. It's just about it. Like I said, it sounds really boring, but boring and routine are what free up my headspace so that I can think about everything else, so that I can adapt if the nurse calls or if he needs to go do an art project that night or something else. I know all the other things have taken care of themselves.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess as we wrap up here, Shannon, is there anything in particular that you would like the listeners to take away from our conversation today, whether it's about leadership or, your brand, your elevator speech, or kind of your work-life balance?
I think it's about remembering that you already have a seat at the table, right? You have a position with us. We have put trust in you to execute that position. And so start to sweep some of that just and extra exclamation points and smileys. Sweep it out, right? Those things are nice, but you don't have to apologize for your existence or for commanding or for checking in, and really just own the span of control that you've been given, right? Take control of it. Put yourself in the leadership position of your own career and your own life, and don't apologize for it, right? Like, there's no reason. You already have the position. You're already here. We already want you here. So now make it what you want it to be, and really, own it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that. Exclamation point, smiley face.
Let me know when you get a chance. No, let me know Tuesday, because that is when I needed it.
Well, Shannon, we really appreciate you sitting down with us. We're excited to keep going with our podcast, but we were very excited that you could be our first guest.
I was excited. Thank you guys for asking me.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
maybe great. You'll come back.
I will happily come back.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to Rewind, Pause, Play with the UTS Women's Mentoring Group. Please feel free to email us at uwmg@utsnacks.com for any questions or comments. We hope you enjoyed this podcast.